guest is Miss Stacey Harvey. Stacey Harvey is speaking from a point of coming out of domestic violence, going straight into the intensive care unit. And now she's standing on the promises of God. Let me tell you that domestic violence is one of those type of things where if you don't really know what you're in, it's hard to figure it out. So tonight we're going to listen to some of the things that kind of related and caused Miss Stacey to go into the type of domestic violence that she experienced throughout the years. And then we're going to talk about some of the patterns of domestic violence and what it is and why individuals who are stuck in domestic violence find it kind of hard to get out. Miss Stacey, I want to say that it is such a pleasure and an honor to have you here. When I heard about your story and when I saw those photos, it just totally broke my heart. It's one of those things because domestic violence is very close to my heart. Right. Because I lost my daughter due to domestic violence. And it's not one of those things where if you've never been in it or if you never had someone as close as I have who's been in it, for you to understand it. Right. So tonight I want the viewers to listen to what you have to say so they can get an understanding of what led to where you went and to now where you are today. So let's talk about your childhood, for example, because a lot of individuals don't understand that certain things that happen to you along the childhood realm can affect you later in life.
So true.
Okay.
I'm honored to be here today with you giving me a platform to be able to speak out about domestic violence. From my childhood growing up, I'm from Jamaica, and I am a child of God. And as I was growing up, I was living with my mom, and my dad didn't live in the home. And it was just me and my mom and my siblings. Even though my dad was still there, I was kind of afraid of my father because, I wasn't really used to being in a home with father and mother.
Right.
And, at an early age, my father and mother decided that they wanted me to migrate to America. And, I've always was the type of person to be a go-getter, like an entrepreneur as a young age, because at 7 years old, I started working at a pastry shop in Jamaica. Oh. And one day I told my mother that, I want to help you. I would like to go out to get a job, and I would like to help to pay the bills. And she laughed about it, but she gave me the okay to go ahead and do so. Mm-hmm. And when I went there, I went down to the shopping center in Harborview, and I began to ask everybody in the shopping center would they give me a job. And everybody looked at me like, is this little girl for real? Because at 7 years old, right. My daughter is 9 years old. And when I look at her, I'm like, me being 7, how is it that I was able to go down there to ask for a job? But determined as I was, I walked into a shop and they said, because you're eager to, to get this job, and because you said that you want to help your mom, okay, we're going to let you go ahead and start. And I was so excited. And I saved up my money, and I've always, told my mother that I would help her, but she never took any money from me. So, when Mother's Day came around, I bought something for my grandmother and my mother. Mm-hmm. So moving forward from that, I was always close to my grandmother. I've always loved my grandmother. Nobody could take me away from my grandmother. I was always grandma's help. And, when my father and mother came together, they decided that they wanted me to migrate to America. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really know my father like that. And I was like, I was excited because I'm like, I've never been to America before, but I was excited to go away, even though I was kind of scared of my father. Right. And my mother said, it's time for you to leave. And I left Jamaica at the age of 8 years old.
Oh,
And when I
wow.
left Jamaica, on my way here, it was me, my father, and my younger brother. And my brother was younger than I. He was like 2 years younger than I was.
Hmm.
And I didn't really know my brother like that. So I came into a strange land, not really knowing this land, not really knowing anyone, just my father and my younger brother. And while I was here, it was just like, I cried every night because I wanted to go back home. And I'm like, why is it that I have to be here? Because I don't want to be with around this man. And I got used to him, and he ended up like starting to deal with another lady. And while he was dealing with her, she became our stepmother. And at the age of 16, I was going to middle school, and then I started going to high school. And my high school was the first high school that I went to was Laurel High School. So I ended up leaving from Laurel High School, transferring from Laurel High School, going to Parkdale High School. And that's when I started like ninth grade year at Parkdale. And I ended up, me and my aunt, my stepmother getting into an altercation. I ended up being out of my father's house, and I wasn't able to go back to my father's house at the age of 16. So it was just like I didn't know who to turn to or where to go, because I didn't know how I was going to get out of this situation.
Wow.
And I had some school friends that I was going to school with.
Okay,
And-
okay. Wait a minute. So your abuse basically started in your own homeland and transferred over to the United States when you moved here. Then it transitioned into what you're saying, a phase of abandonment, because the only familiar faces and bloodline that you had here was your father and your brother.
Right. And my,
So, and then your stepmom came later on in the picture.
right.
But because of a argument,
Mm-hmm.
your father abandoned you and chose her over you.
Right.
So that left you in a homeless state.
Right.
And oh my God, I just don't know what I can say to you about that. Because I am so baffled that you would have your 15 and a half, almost 16-year-old daughter out homeless on the street over an argument.
Right.
But you were covered by the blood. You were
Amen.
covered. And later on, you were able to move in with a few of your high school friends.
Yes, I was able to. I was going to school with some high school friends, and one of the school friends was actually there the day when I got into the argument with my stepmother.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "Why don't you just come to my house? They're having a birthday party for my niece, so why don't you just come over and you can stay there?" So I was like, "Okay, no problem." And when I went there, and while I was there, the school friend, I was still kind of shaking, because I'm like, where am I going to sleep? Where
Right.
I'm going? I don't know where I'm going.
Right.
And she was like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But in the back of my head, I'm like, I have to worry about it, because I
Exactly.
don't know what I'm going to do. And she was like, you will be okay. So like the night came, and the weekend came, and the day when I was supposed to go to school came, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And at this point, their aunt was wondering, why is this girl here at my house?
Right.
And I'm like, what am I gonna do? But my friend kept saying, don't worry about anything. You could just stay here,
Yeah.
because she's not thinking about anything else but trying to shelter me.
That's right.
And she was like, you could just stay here. Don't worry about anything. And I was like, okay, no problem. But yet still, the aunt was like, why is she still here?
Right.
And as I began to talk to the friend, she was like, I will talk to her. Don't worry about it. And, one day I was in the house, and it was just, the friend wasn't there, but it was 5 of us as females in the house. And one day it was just the aunt and her daughter that was there. And I had went downstairs to the basement to try to wash some clothes that I had. And when I went downstairs in the basement to try to wash the clothes, the uncle, the aunt's brother, was there. And he was downstairs in the basement, and he was watching TV, but me not thinking anything about it,
Right.
you know, because he always talked to me. And he was like, come here, I want to speak to you. So I said, I'm about to go back upstairs. I'll be back. So he was like, no, come here. I said, just give me a minute. I'll come back upstairs. And he began to walk towards me, and he grabbed my leg on the steps. And once he grabbed my leg, he started pulling on my leg, and I was like, let me go, let me go. And he wouldn't let me go, and he was trying to pull me down underneath him to rape me. And I started screaming, and I ended up kicking him in his groin, and I started screaming, and I ran upstairs and was screaming, but nobody was there because I was all the way in the basement. It was 3 levels. And as I was screaming, I'm like, I don't see anybody. So I went into one of my friends' room, and I was just scared, like my heart was beating so fast. And I was just like really, really scared. And I said, you know what, let me not stay in this closet, because I went into the closet at first. And then it's like something said, come out of this closet and go into the other room. So I went into the other room where my friend, her and her baby, she had just had a baby, and she was in the other room with her daughter. And she had went downstairs. So when she went downstairs, I ran into her room, and I was under her bed. And while I was under her bed, I was so scared. My heart was beating so fast.
Yeah.
He came upstairs. And when he came upstairs, he went into the room that I was in, and he walked into that
He was hunting
closet.
for you. He was looking for you.
He walked into the same room, and I was looking directly across. So I'm under the bed, and I can see him.
Right.
And he was walking like from the closet. He looked in the room and walking from the closet, coming into the room. And as he was coming into the room, it's like I feel like I'm about to get a panic attack under this bed. So at the same time, the girl came upstairs and was like, what are you doing in my room? And he was like, oh, nothing. He backed off and came out of the room. And when he came out of the room, I was like under the bed, and I was looking up, and I was like tapping on the bed. And she was looking down like, what is going on? And I was like, Mika, I'm under the bed. She was like, what are you doing under the bed?
Yeah.
So I was like so scared, and I was shaking, and I was like, your uncle tried to rape me downstairs in the basement. And she was so angry, she ran into her mother's room, and she was like, you know, Uncle Mikey almost tried to rape Stacey in the basement. You need to do something about it. And he was she was like, she was arguing and fussing with her mother. I could hear her from the other room. She was arguing and fussing with her mother.
Right.
She was telling her mother, like, look, if Stacey can't stay here, I'm leaving with my daughter. And I was really honored the fact that she picked up for me, because I'm just a stranger on the street. And
Yes.
she chose to pick up for me and saying that, you know, if she can't stay here, I'm leaving. So that's how the mother ended up saying, okay, she can stay. And
Well, wait a minute. Because there are so many households where there are uncles or brothers that are predators and that are looking for innocent faces and just innocent children like you were at that time to take advantage of. So many. Because in my personal situation, I grew up in the house for 18 years with a predator. So I can definitely understand how you felt when he tried to rape you, and that heartbeat, and you running and you trying to hide and trying to stay safe. So I can feel it, I see it, and I understand it. And there, 1 in 5 girls become victims of sexual assault and rapes. And this is girls from the ages of 12 to 17. So in that age range, you fit right in with the statistics and the data that shows that the victimization of young girls are so active that this is happening every day. Every 98 seconds, a female is being victimized and raped. Every 98 seconds. Oh, My God. So, okay, let's move on from that type of abuse to where later on in life when you started to date and trying to figure out who you are in life and growing into womanhood. Let's talk about that because was it difficult for you to understand what a woman was and womanhood and then the anatomy of a relationship?
I mean, I was a tomboy, so it was just more like I wasn't really about boys like that. At the age of 14, when I started working at McDonald's, I met a young guy, and we used to always hang out together. But it wasn't nothing serious. It was just more like we were friends. And moving forward from that, I ended up talking to another guy at the age of 19. And while I was dealing with this guy, it was just more like he was so overpossessive. Like he didn't want me to go anywhere. He always wanted to be around me. He always wanted me to not be able to breathe. And I was like, this is not normal. And his friends used to think that I'm taking him away from them.
Right.
And they used to be like, why is it that he's always around you? And I'm like, you don't understand. I'm trying to tell this man to stay away and go hang out with his friends, but he never would. And I even found myself, even with that situation, like he used to drive down the street on the opposite side of the street and told me that if I can't have you, nobody can. What if I kill you and me and you can die right here? And I mean, he's driving on the opposite side of the street and vehicles is coming towards us. And I'm like, this is not normal. So I would always try to get rid of him, but it was just like, I can never get rid of him.
Yeah.
And one day I ended up like going to my father's house, and I was with my younger brother, and he was riding his bike. And I said, let me just take him around the back way, because I looked up the street and I saw him looking down the street at me.
Right.
And I was like, this is crazy. So as he's looking down the street at me, I went around the back part, and then I caught him, and I was like, what are you doing in this neighborhood? And he was like, like, hesitating.
And that's that stalking behavior.
Yeah. So even to the point where my childhood friend that I grew up with wanted me to go to prom with him, but I was older than him, and I had been graduated, and he was like, he wanted me to go to prom with him, and I said, okay, no problem. And he told me if I let that friend come to the house, because he wanted me to help him pick out a suit, it was him and his mother that was coming to the house. He said that if the guy come to the house, I would throw a brick in his car and I would shoot up the vehicle. And I said, no, go ahead and stay where you are. Don't come to my house. You and your mother go ahead and pick out that suit.
Oh, gosh. Ooh, well, the good thing about it is that you had the intuition in you to understand some of the dangers of domestic violence. And so that's definitely a major sign is someone that is so controlling and so possessive, who just wants to be under you and don't want you to do anything, don't want you to have any friends. And with the stalking pattern, that's definitely the warning signs that a lot of young women need to look at. So what happened with that relationship with him?
I had to, like, I don't know how I ended up getting rid of him. I changed my number. I just disappeared.
Oh,
and
okay.
He didn't know where I was, and I just got ghost. And he was wondering what happened to me. That's how I really, honestly, how I really got rid of him. And like, moving forward, one day I was at my friend's house, and she was like, a young lady came there to the house, and she was like, when the young lady walked into her house, it was a group of us that was in there. And the young lady was beat up so badly, like she had black eyes and all of these things. And I'm looking at her like, this will never happen to me. Like, how did you ever let somebody do that to you?
Right.
And I was like, I would never let anybody do that to me, because I did see the signs of this possessive boyfriend.
Right.
And it could have led to more than that because he was driving on the opposite side of the street to try to kill both of us.
And then he threatened you. So especially men who have access to weapons, they will use those weapons.
Oh, sure enough, he did, because I was actually in my friend's house, and he came to the door, and I was staying at this friend's house, and he came to the door and was telling the friend how much juices he bought her in the house, and I was like, what? So she pushed him out. She pushed me and him out the door and was like, just let him go ahead. You stay out there. Not knowing that he had a gun outside. He was walking up and down the street with a gun saying that he's going to kill me. He had a gun. And I was like, I'm with you. Just
Right.
Because I didn't want him to kill me. And he had this big old long gun, and we walking up and down the street, pacing the street back and forth.
Oh, Lord. Jesus. Definitely a crazy maniac.
Yeah.
Something is not right with a man's mind if he has to be this possessive and controlling, because all the men who are violent and controlling and possessive like that, they have their own insecurities and loss of self-worth and loss of love and understanding of what a healthy relationship is. So it's like one of those things where they got to force you into submission of a relationship.
Yeah. I think
And so anyone that wants to force you into something, make you submissive to something, they are dangerous. And this is domestic violence. So I noticed a few years later, I want to say you became a victim of domestic violence.
Yes.
And just give us a little bit of how that happened and played a role into the horrors that you experienced.
Okay, when I met this guy, I thought he was like, the world. Me and him was like freaking frat. We was always together. Like, you would never see him without me. It was like the yin to my yang.
Yeah.
And the first 2 years, everything was great. And I was like, I'm really, really falling for this guy. And the first 2 years, we went into a point in our life where we lost somebody that was close to both of us. And we ended up mourning that death. So it drew us even closer.
Right.
And, we ended up moving in together from that. And when we moved in together, I ended up getting pregnant. And I was like 3 months pregnant at the time. And how this thing happened, it started with me being pregnant. And one day I was in the house cleaning up, and while I was in the house cleaning up, a young lady called the phone. But I wasn't no jealous girlfriend to be searching in your phone or anything like that. And the person called the phone, but because he was in the shower, I was like, let me answer the phone to let them know that he's in the shower. And while the person was on the phone, they said they wanted to speak to him, and I said that, can I take a message? And she's turned and she said that she's his woman. So I said, well, if you're his woman, then who am I? And she started going off on the phone. So I'm like, at this point, I don't need to speak to you. I need to speak to him.
Right.
Because it's not about you at this point. I'm pregnant and we live together.
I know that's right.
And he came out of the shower, and as I was walking into the bathroom, he was coming inside of the room. So I backed off and came inside of the room, and I had the phone in my hand, and I held the phone up, and I was like, who is this person? And while I was holding the phone up, he grabbed the phone out of my hand, smashed it on the floor, and started beating me as if I was a man. And he kicked me, he punched me, he kicked me in my stomach, he stomped me, he did everything possible. And he dragged me and did everything. And I laid there on the floor for a good 35 to 45 minutes wondering what just happened. I thought it was like a nightmare that I need to wake up out of. And as I'm laying there, and I was like, is this for real? I called a friend, and I was like, can I told her what happened, and I said, can I come to your house? And she said, yes, no problem. And She was like, you can stay as long as you want. And I said, okay, thank you. So while I was there, bawling my eyes out and crying till I couldn't cry anymore, I was like, I'm going to go home to get some clothes and I will be back. And as I was walking to this person's room, the person, she was on the phone and she was having a conversation and I can hear it. And she was having a conversation and she was laughing at me. And while she was laughing, I was like, this is not something, it broke my heart because I was so close to this person. And I was like, I backed off. I never said anything to her. I just walked through the door and I went home. And I ended up staying in the house and staying in that relationship for 6 years, 6 more years.
Lord.
So, from me being in that relationship for 8 years, 6 of those years I was being abused. I was being stomped on. I was being beaten. I got hit in my face with a gun. I was knocked unconscious on the floor to the point where I woke up in a pool of blood with my tooth missing. My daughter was in the other room. He left. And, it was just going on and on and on. I ended up getting pregnant again.